Bonjour et bénez-vous. Les Wicked Webs We Weave podcast. Je m'appelle Ryan Mckern. Bonsoir. And welcome to the Wicked Webs We Weave. I'm your host, Ryan Mckern. Join us weekly for tales of haunted history, paranormal, ghost stories, all things horror. Warm yourself to the proverbial fire, dim the lights, and welcome to the Wicked Webs We Weave. The Omni Royal Orleans is considered to be one of the most prestigious hotels in the city. Well before it was a hotel, it became a place where slaves were bought and sold. Even in the rooms today, the sounds of moaning and groaning can be heard. This hotel and even other places in New Orleans' French Quarter also serve as a site of some paranormal activity, and possibly the ghosts of those who have lived under the harsh conditions in New Orleans before the abolition of slavery in the 1860s. If you are in New Orleans without a roof over your head or a bed to lay down in, and you have a little money to spend, then you should consider the Omni Royal Orleans Hotel. It is a highly regarded hotel in the Crescent City and attracts visitors from around the world. Though it is one of the most luxurious hotels, the story of its past might be one of the reasons why it might actually be haunted. Could it be that the spirits of past guests have overstayed their welcome? Or was it something else? You are about to learn the history of this hotel and the stories of how it might be one of the most haunted places in the city, known for its jazz and voodoo culture, and at one point also served crucial staging post for the most major industries of southern United States prior to Civil War. The Omni Royal Orleans was originally known as the St. Louis Hotel. It was built by the Creoles, who inhabited New Orleans as a rival to another hotel that was built by Anglo-Americans, known as the St. Charles Hotel. The hotel is situated in the French Quarter neighborhood of New Orleans, where it stands to this day. The building was constructed in 1838. Early on the hotel years, the Creoles utilized the hotel as a place where people from all over can visit. Other guests have included visitors from Europe. The place was perhaps known for the high society to socialize and even display scenes of debauchery. Despite the lively nightlife that would one day be the centerpiece of New Orleans culture, it was also a place where the wealthy citizens of the South would purchase or sell slaves. The hotel was one of the major hubs of the slave trade in the southern United States before the Civil War had broken out. There were regular auctions occurring at the Omni Hotel, with plantation owners and people seeking domestic servants making bids for and purchasing and selling human slaves. People being sold came from other parts of the United States, often brought in by boat from other coastal port cities like Baltimore. While waiting to be bought or sold, these poor people were held captive at a secret location somewhere in the French Quarter in 1840. Sales of slaves totaled around $50,000, or $1.5 million in today's money, at the St. Louis Hotel alone. In 1841, a fire had swept through the hotel and left it completely destroyed. However, it quickly became rebuilt thanks to the financial contributions from a local bank. The building was rebuilt with fire-resistant materials. The hotel served as a medical facility for Union soldiers during the Civil War, after the city was seized by them in 1862. As Louisiana gave in to Reconstruction, the state of Louisiana purchased the hotel, which would become de facto Capitol building. Afterward, it was one of the occasional assembly locations for the Louisiana legislature. The ownership changes were constant after the Civil War. The condition of the hotel deteriorated over the years, alongside the French Quarter in general. An unnamed hurricane battered the city in 1915, and like much of the French Quarter, the hotel sustained serious damage afterward. The part of the French Quarter would not be touched until at least 1960, when the hotel was rebuilt and later named Omni Royal Orleans. One account of haunting of the hotel was reported by a guest, recounting they had seen the spirit of a maid wandering the halls, simply making sure that guests were comfortable and ensuring that their stay is pleasant. It does make one wonder what kind of guests would be confronted by their ghost, and perhaps comforted by that same ghost. Another guest reported their sheets were tucked tight in and almost perfectly arranged when they had woken up. They did not remember the sheets being like that before they're going to sleep. Perhaps the ghostly maid was fanatically tucking guests in while they slept. Again, not very comforting. More typically of ghosts are the reported sounds of moaning and groaning in the corridors of the Omni Hotel. Volume of human misery that has passed through the hotel boggles the mind. The slaves must have been kept captive at the hotel. Many have said that the noises must come from the accumulated misery seeping into the fabric of the building. The spirits of those that endured the inhuman conditions and inhumane treatment of slavery should be heard today. The hotel was brought to the ground and arose twice in its history, both on the exact same spot. It must be this place, not the fabric where hauntings and spiritual activities have happened almost constantly. The unhappy and happy spirits of the quarter still seem to reside at the Omni Royals Hotel. Much of the French Quarter is reported to have seen spirits and its visitors experiencing uneasy feelings while coming and going. But how did the neighborhood itself become haunted to begin with? One such event can be traced back to the late 1800s. From 1817 to 1905, the city had been in the grips of a lengthy yellow fever epidemic. As the yellow fever had ravaged the city, it reached its peak throughout the 1850s, when it killed nearly 8,000 people in 1853, and nearly 5,000 people 5 years later in 1858. It would not see another peak until 1878, when it claimed the lives of 4,000 people. All told, more than 20,000 people had died due to yellow fever. The virus was carried by mosquitoes and had already infected a good part of the immigrant population that descended into New Orleans. It had gotten to the point where it was easy to contract the virus and eventually die from it. The cases year after year would spike in the summer months due to the mosquitoes being out and about. It had gotten to the point where drivers of wagons known as corpse wagons were circling the neighborhoods, calling out anyone in the area to bring out their dead. It was said that the victims of the yellow fever were buried in mass graves. By the turn of the 20th century, scientists had a solution. It put an end to the suffering. By 1905, the yellow fever epidemic was subdued. It is unknown where exactly the mass grave is located, but it can be probably traced somewhere in the French Quarter. Whether buildings were constructed over the graves is anyone's guess. But the spirits of those who met their untimely deaths are said to still wander the streets of the French Quarter, searching for answers as to why they have passed. But for now, they take up refuge in the homes, bars, and hotels that draw in many residents and tourists to the French Quarter day in and day out. I highly encourage everyone to visit the Omni Royal Orleans Hotel, where you can stay there to this day. Through many years of disaster and rebuilding, the hotel still stands, but the spirits that inhabit the hotel might still remain. You may encounter one the minute you walk outside the door. If you can't find one in this hotel, he may be elsewhere in the many of spirits of the French Quarter. I'd like to thank novaghost.com and research for this episode. I am Ryan Mckern. Thank you for joining us again for the Wicked Webs We Weave podcast. Please subscribe and share and leave a comment in our video. And until we meet again, my friends, au revoir.